What moment in an argument made you realize this person is an idiot and there is no winning scenario? When he countered my fact-based argument with "that's just your opinion." No, dude, it's not. I just listed the responsibilities on your job description. One of my many stories from working in a discount shoe store. Woman with 3 boys under the age of 12 come in. Woman goes up to the counter. Woman, I need to exchange these shoes in for a different size. Me, okay, let me get that started for you. Normally we can exchange shoes in for the same model just in a size up or down. It's pretty common for parents to buy shoes underestimating how much their kids have grown and come in for a bigger size. Anyway, I open the box. The shoes are completely trashed. Toe blown out, the sole is peeling off, and they smell to high heaven. Me, Mom, I'm sorry but I can't make an exchange for these shoes. Woman, well why not? Me, I wouldn't be able to resell them but I think we still have this style if you wanted to purchase a new pair. Woman, why can't I just exchange these shoes for a bigger size? Insert store name here. Has always let me exchange shoes when my kid grows out of them. Me, Mom, I'm sorry that someone has told you we do that but that's not a policy we have. I can return or exchange shoes that are in good enough condition to be resold but I can't resell these. Woman, other stores have let me exchange them. Me, which store have you done this with? Woman, can I speak to your manager? And that's when I knew there we no winning with this bee. After asking them to go home because they were quite clearly sick with a cold, being told don't be stupid, there's no such thing as colds, it's just allergies to the cold weather. Well, and 3rd degree burns are just being allergic to being on fire. He had an aversion to Stephen King. Thought Stephen King only wrote gory trash with no redeeming value. That everyone who read Stephen King had mental issues. And his favorite movie was The Shawshank Redemption. Even after I showed the credits both on IMDb and Wikipedia, he refused to believe that degenerate Stephen King was in any way, shape or form involved with his dearly beloved film. This has happened to Stephen King. There's a few audience with videos on YouTube talking at various campuses and events, etc. He tells this story of going into a Floridan supermarket and an old lady telling him she didn't like horror stories but like uplifting stories like that Shawshank Redemption. King says, I wrote that. She replies, no you didn't, and walks off. Because the human body has evolved to heal itself of all diseases and illnesses, that a natural diet is all that is needed. Sometimes loads of garlic is required for those extra stubborn issues, aka cancer. Had an argument with someone who convinced a friend to stop their chemo and rely on healing crystals to cure them of their cancer. Friend later died of cancer. Back when I was 10 or something, my older sister yelled at me for swearing. I was not swearing. IWAA, just yelling really loud. Probably shouldn't have been, but whatever. After I point this out, she continues to tell me that yelling and swearing are the same thing, and in order to prove it she whispered, frick, I wish we weren't related. She was helping you out, man. It's only swearing if an adult hears you. When she kept trying to change the subject, every time she realized she was wrong, I stayed with verifiable facts. She went all over the map, bringing up crap I did like 5 years ago. You can't turn right at this red light. The sign says so right there. Well, you burnt that craft dinner that one time. You didn't read those instructions, did you? Who the heck burns craft dinner? You can't turn right at this red light. The sign says so right there. Freaking hate that when people are mad at you for something, and suddenly bring up a bunch of old crap you did that made them mad at the time, to add fuel to the fire. We had a new assistant at work who was not fitting in with the team. I sat her down and talked to her about expectations and reviewed the responsibilities of the position several times. In one last effort to help her, I thought I'd see which parts of the job she liked. I asked her, what skill do you think is your strongest skill? And she said, delegating. I have worked as a trainer for a management position where we had to force people to step back, stop trying to do everything, and just delegate. If someone came in for an interview and said delegation was their strength, they already had a foot in the door. It was hilarious seeing people adjust. If you like to stay active, it made you feel lazy and worthless. When a sex manager insisted to me it was impossible for a laptop CPU to hit over 100C because that would melt gold. His tech expert buddy backing him up the whole time. This friend of mine was always late when we wanted to hang out. Sometimes she even cancelled last minute, 10 minutes before the time we were supposed to meet. I once made a joke saying we all knew she was the worst when having to meet her because she was so unorganized and cancelled so many events. A few days before she was leaving for college we were meant to meet, so I arrived late knowing she was going to be anyway. Waited for her for about an hour or so, but it was the last day I could meet with her so I didn't mind that much and I asked a friend to wait with me. I received the message 1.5 hours later saying, "I'm not coming and don't even bother me asking why. I don't have to justify when I arrive later." That day I realized she wasn't worth it, because yes, I deserve an explanation when waiting you for almost 2 hours. It was a friend like this that was habitually late that caused me to make the 30-minute rule. I'll only wait half an hour then I'm leaving. An old roommate of mine was trying to say we were blackmailing her when we were asking her to take out her trash, etc. She said watch the Lizzie McGuire movie. There's blackmail in there and it's obvious that's what you're doing to me. I believe it goes without saying that she never cleaned up after herself nor did she understand that movie. Blackmail is such an ugly word. I prefer extortion. The X makes it cool. Ended up being a win-win situation. After a week of constant arguing and telling my now ex-boyfriend and telling him in no uncertain terms that we are over, he came to me one morning and said, "Well, if you don't want to work on this, I don't think we should be together anymore." I just agreed. Someone who is dating my roommate considers herself to be environmentally conscious. She claimed that napkins were bad for the environment and they increase one's carbon footprint. She ranted about it to me in my own home, even though I don't even buy napkins. Maybe a week or so later, she noticed I use a reusable coffee filter and berated me for not using disposable paper filters. I told her that using a reusable filter cuts down on the amount of waste that we produce when brewing coffee. So, not only do I not contribute to filling up landfills with paper filters, but I also save money from not buying them in the first place and just cleaning the plastic one. She told me that since paper filters are biodegradable, there is no reason for me to refrain from using them. But napkins are made of paper. Napkins are made of paper. She literally just wanted to stand on a soapbox and hear herself talk. She derives pleasure from telling others that they are wrong, regardless of whether or not they are actually wrong. There is no winning an argument with her. This is even worse than you think. If anything, the napkins would be better for the environment as some napkins are made with recycled paper, however coffee are typically not. When I was arguing with someone about why milk doesn't go in first when making a cup of tea, a very English debate, and his argument was when you add boiling water to cold milk, you're warming it up, but when you add cold milk to boiling water, you're cooling it down, and I don't want cold tea. I tried to explain how the end temperature will be exactly the same regardless, but he was already celebrating his self-awarded victory. A discussion with someone about the process of getting a license. Obviously they didn't have one, and didn't believe that you had to do a 5-hour driving class to get one. The moment came when they tried the whole "you can't always believe stuff from the internet" and we're just like A, you jump on pretty much any conspiracy theory you find on the internet, and B, we're on the fricking DMV's website. They seriously still didn't believe it, and tried to go the whole "you gotta use Google to win arguments" route. My cousins are flat earthers. When lack of evidence is just proof of a conspiracy, it's best to just disengage. You can't break into that prison. They have to break out. You can't reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. Every time on Reddit you give an opinion and everyone tells you you're wrong. And I don't mean here are some facts that show your opinion to be a stupid one, but when you say you like to film. That's never happened to me, so you must be wrong. The concept of free will is an illusion that the Jews that run the internet and the world have created. How do you know? That sounds a bit fishy, man. I read about it online. I have found the truth. Can you send me those links? No, you have to find the truth yourself. It also did not help to point out that the Jews that apparently ran the internet must have known their secret was out on their internet. I'm not even going to say anything. This is too dumb. This whole thread brings to mind a quote I've always liked. Arguing with stupid people is like playing chess with a pigeon. Eventually the bird would just crap on the board, knock over all the pieces, and strut around like it's won. You'll always lose an argument with an idiot. They'll just bring it down to their level and beat you with experience. In class we were discussing what would happen if his sun disappeared and this one girl said we would all fly over the earth. I told her the earth has its own gravitational pull and she just said no it doesn't. So I said do you know what gravity is? She says yes. I say it's the force that pulls you to the ground. Right? She says yes. So I point out the window to the sun. I just walked away. Probably misremembered a video about what would happen if the earth instantaneously stopped spinning about its axis or orbiting the sun. They tried to say you're a freshman was correct grammar rather than you're a freshman. Keep in mind, they are majoring in language and they're a senior. People who say stuff like okay, that's your opinion, but I have my own when discussing about objective facts, like science issues, meaning of words. Edit. A lot of people seem confused with my wording. I'm adding a couple of examples of what I mean. Science. Water boils at 70 degrees Celsius. That's my opinion. Words. In my opinion. The Spanish word hola means dog. So basically, facts which are either true or false and not open to opinions. I remember discussing the act of placing your palms together and bowing in the context of a greeting. This guy was trying to argue that it was a common thing in Japan. It isn't. I'm Japanese and have lived in Japan. He's American and has never been to Japan. He was saying I must be wrong because he experienced it once, in a Japanese restaurant, in Thailand. When he told me that climate change was because of magnetic north moving up to 20 miles per day. Of course when the tilt of the planet changes you're going to get more sun and more heat. But people want to believe it's my car. Freaking heck. Oh, this guy was good for a twofer, as well. I don't try to argue politics. I present his party of choices, values. People can choose to agree with me or be wrong, but I won't argue with them this after listening to him badger someone for nearly an hour straight. When they were claiming all the facts I presented about the earth being round and older than 10.000 years was fake. A month ago I honestly believed people were just taking the pee when talking about flat earthers, but now I'm scared for our planet's future. Flat earthers are people that are just addicted to being contrarian and meeting up in groups to get high on stupid thoughts. It's really just a psychological phenomenon. The difference between them and us is that we will get tired of arguing eventually. Do you even know where the prostate is? Yeah, it's in your balls. The prostate is stored in the balls. When my SIL told me that liberals in power, last administration, were using cell towers to burn the soles of the feet of registered Republican voters, like cell towers were some sort of sci-fi weaponry that could tap into the voting database and then laser target individuals. When I told her this was science fiction, she insisted it had happened to her. Or, same SIL tried to convince me that during his first term in office, Obama had visited a hospital where a series of late-term abortions had failed in that the babies were born alive. She said that doctors had put the babies into a supply closet to wait for them to die, and that Obama had stood guard at the door. Just, what do you say to that? Sometimes the idiocy is so strong that you just have to not bother making an effort, as an act of self-preservation. That whole please provide proof of every point you've made using sources I approve of thing when they've shown you made up crap from nonsense sources, and then add the I'll wait. Yeah, do your own homework and you're right, you will wait forever. The airlock is that way. Got into it once with my brother-in-law, who is a moon landing denier. Every one of his sources were conspiracy blogs talking about how certain things were impossible, without saying why or how, unless it was nonsense techno babble. This is a longer story, but that's enough to get to know it. When my ex-girlfriend would get drunk and bring up something I had no idea was an issue, me not being emotional enough, spending too much time playing video games, etc., I quickly realized she didn't want to actually discuss or hear what I had to say. She just wanted to freak out and tell me how bad of a person I was. I'm glad to hear that she's an ex. I was arranging with a boomer co-worker that minimum wage was more back in the 70s than it was today, adjusted for inflation, and this dumb butt trucker overheard the conversation and tried to say it wasn't. I tried telling him the inflation argument, but his counter-argument was, well, you take $1 in Texas, and you can take that same dollar in New York and stretch it out the same. He didn't get that the dollar has value, and at certain points of time, the dollar was once worth more than it is now. I kept trying to tell him for 20 minutes that if you took that dollar and time traveled from the current time to the 70s you would be able to buy much more with it. He just wasn't having it. Every counter argument I would make, well, that's the liberal media. Or when I told him to Google an inflation calendar that was a tool of the Satan Hillary Clinton, even the boomer co-worker was like, this dude's dumb. After agreeing with some of his initial points, at the end of the convo, I told him I'm going to stop arguing with him because he's not taking anything I've said into consideration, and he took it as a win. You're stopping because I've won this argument, and I just told him okay and that we had to lock up the store. An uncle of mine stating that even though I'm probably an okay gay, that he wouldn't trust his children around me for the same reason he wouldn't trust his kids hanging out with black people, because they would probably start stealing. He's a toothless moron who stopped going to school in the 4th grade. Such a huge surprise. A co-worker went on a rant about how all teachers are lazy and only work from 8-3 while taking loads of holiday time while doing minimal work. I come from a family of teachers, so I could see the time put in at home, the lost weekends, the days of doing work till 7 p.m. The last 2 weeks of every summer holiday spent in school prepping the classroom for the next year, buying materials out of their own pocket because the school budget wouldn't cover it. My co-worker's response: well, I'm a parent so I know more about it than you do. I nearly flipped my freaking lid. The thing with opinions about teachers is that since everyone went to school, everyone feel like a specialist of what teaching is about. The truth is that, as a student, you have no idea what the teacher is doing. I was arguing with my geography teacher about the Earth and its rotation. I completely gave up when she said the Earth was rotating towards north instead of eastward. A few weeks later, to no one's surprise, she was fired for having presented a fake resume to the school. She was not only the dumbest teacher I've ever had the pleasure to talking, but probably the dumbest person as well. My best friend knows I'm headed into the military and he keeps saying have fun in the army. I tell him I'm enlisted to the Navy. I know, isn't the Navy part of the army? We had a back and forth argument that the Navy is part of the military and army is a separate branch, but he insists that the word army and military have the same meaning. He is totally not trying to wind you up. Co-worker would constantly preach against GMOs, parabens, only use oils when sick, etc. She told me I was going to get cancer from my deodorant, and the corn I bought was mutant. Then she'd go outside and smoke 3 cigarettes every 2 hours. American spirits are all natural. Someone posting, why do I have to apologize for being a monster when the people who made me this way don't have to apologize on their Facebook wall? They always had an inability to own up to their mistakes. The fact that they posted that without irony in their mid-30s after someone called them out for their balls just cemented it for me. They are never going to change. They are going to continue to live their life without ever taking responsibility for their actions. I'm not sure what the exact issue was, but the guy asked me about whether or not I knew why something was done in the way it was done, like, what the reasoning for the method was, and I knew the answer. He presented me his own answer which relied on certain things that were not very accurate, and you could tell that he worked on that theory a while and this must have been the reason. I debunked it very quickly and gave him the actual reasoning. You could see that he understood it but didn't want to throw his well-crafted theory away like trash. So he tried to argue his theory and the actual reasoning somehow. It got really weird. Finally I looked it up on my phone and he still thought that his theory must also have played a role, which was just wrong. I had a similar situation just yesterday with the same person. Was about basically how weather moves as he has no scientific background whatsoever, which he said and which was the reason he asked for an answer. I wasn't that sure but I did my best in providing a physically accurate answer based on the data we had. He started arguing about it and brought on his own theory again. This time it wasn't crafted over years of thinking about it but on the spot. Again, he stated himself that he has no idea. How can you argue about something if you say and know you don't know anything about it? When he said climate scientists and meteorologists are just physics majors that failed out, to back up why he claimed global warming doesn't exist. I showed a group of people an atomic force microscope and a weird looking woman asked, "Do you use this machine for peaceful or military usage?" Me, "I am sorry, but this is a microscope. You can see small things a lot bigger with this." She, "You evade my question. Peaceful or military? You can play chess against a pigeon. Even though you win, the pigeon will walk over the chessboard and take a dump on your king." When someone thought their own personal experiences couldn't be dismissed as anecdotal evidence, when that's literally the definition of anecdotal. I kept asking my 2-year-old son for help with my calculus homework. This sucker didn't even know how to add. Kept looking at me and yelling jello. I fix guns. Guy has a problem with his gun. Says he can't hit broadside of a barn and showed it to another guy and so he thinks he has a problem. Okay, check it out for mechanical problems. No issues. Next go out and shoot it. Group's about a fist-sized group at 10 yards. Not amazing, but standard combat group. Show him the evidence. Starts talking about how he never said anything about accuracy. Guy is full of it. No matter how many times I explained how guns work and how I showed him his is fine, he wouldn't believe because some guy told him it isn't. Go through a long thing about what he would consider good and acceptable. That if it shot well, functioned properly, but had this rattle noise, would it be acceptable? Nope. It could jam every other shot and as long as it didn't rattle a little he would be happier. Hope you offered to take it off his hands for cheap since it wasn't working and then resold it, lol. Pretty specific situation here, but when she said that we're all born with all of God's, Yahweh's, rules in our heads, I asked, "You mean like all of the rules for sacrificing animals and what to plant where and all that?" You're 5 years old, has those rules in his head right now, and she said yes. I asked then why did they need to write the rules down? And why don't people on the other side of the planet seem to know them? I can't even remember her answer. Something about actively rejecting Jesus. I once had a debate with my mom about what happens on the day that daylight savings time happens. She insisted that something happened in space to make the day be longer and that was why we changed the clocks. It was at that moment I realized that I got all of my brains from my dad. When the last 3 points they made were the same thing rephrased, I called them out on it but they gave me detention. I hated my maths teacher. I've posted this in a different sub, but here we go. I had an obnoxious co-worker who believed every conspiracy theory you could imagine. He was also super religious. He found out I was an atheist. Now generally I don't try to invite these conversations anymore. I used to when I was younger, but I don't care enough to argue with people about religion anymore. However, this was an extremely liberal company full of a lot of liberal people. Having a calm conversation about religion wouldn't bug anyone I worked with. Besides, he started it, so I gave it some effort. Then as usual realized this was a lost cause. He began loudly proselytizing to me in the middle of the office, and not in an ironic way. This was a mid-sized software company with, as I mentioned, a lot of extremely liberal people, not to mention a rather sizable population of LGBTQ+ people who didn't feel too kindly toward the sound of fire and brimstone preaching. I quoted the Bible back at him and told him I've heard it all. I don't care. I pointed out that one of the two founders, former CIO, and semi-retired but still head of the board, was also an atheist and not shy about it. After that he went on a conspiratorial rant once he noticed a very conspicuous bronze Baphomet statue on my desk for apparently the first time. He then decided to storm out to complain to HR that I'm offending his religious beliefs. Note that he had a big butt crucifix at his desk that I never said crap about. All of IT, the developer pit, and the design team heard this, along with anyone in the break room which was right next to IT. He was already on thin ice for being lazy as heck and having only been there a couple of months. That was pretty much the icing on the cake. Thing is, he should have realized that even if the company wasn't filled with as many left-leaning people as it was, everyone knew full well if I were to get in trouble over this, I'm the kind of person who'd sue over it to make a point. The company would side with me to protect themselves if nothing else. After he was fired, he called the Secret Service to tell them that I was plotting to go after Trump. This was just after the election, and they actually showed up at the office to question me. The agent was saying he couldn't tell me who called them. But after he asked if there was anyone I could think of who'd do something like this, I mentioned this guy's name as being one of the few people I could imagine. And I mentioned that he was let go a week prior. He said okay, I have a few more questions I have to ask, but I think I know what's going on here. He was arrested and charged with filing a false report to the Secret Service. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.